Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this weekly Ag Weather Forecast for AgSouth Farm Credit. I'm going to start you off with a new resource today before we dig into this forecast, because in the forecast we need to talk about the progression of systems for the next several days, what it means in terms of our total precipitation amounts as we progress through spring. And then I've got new long-range information to compare against the CPC, which we showed last week, and I want to have a broader discussion about this hurricane season. So that's all ahead of us as we get through this. But the first resource is the one you've been looking at. Brand new update from water.noaa.gov, water.noaa.gov. And what it is it's their new way by which they're displaying river gauge data. Now, we have been very wet up in North Carolina. In fact, the whole of AgSouth territory has been quite wet as of late, given this stalled out frontal boundary at the end of the week. But you can kind of zoom in here and move around and look at things. So earlier this morning, where we have the flood watch still out in North Carolina, pick any of the icons and you can see the river gauges. So I'll just pick the one that's in red, the Tar River near Greenville. And you can see that it's expected here over the next couple of days, up to April 1st, to get up to 17 feet, which is in moderate flood stage. So I want you using the resource, bookmark it, water.noaa.gov. Great resource to just monitor our flood threat throughout any given year and to see the river systems at any time. From there, let's take a look at the last 72 hours of total accumulated precipitation, because after the heavy rains moved through the Mid-South and the South along the Gulf Coast, the frontal boundary kind of stalled out right here in AgSouth territory, adding a lot of early spring rainfall. Take note that this system did miss parts of the central United States. It missed big sections of the plains, the southern plains, major dust storm earlier this week in Texas. This is one we just have to continue to have a dialogue about, because when I think about this upcoming growing season, I'm just going to tell you, I'll draw over the top of this map to make my point. What I'm starting to get concerned about is one of three areas for drought. The first one being here in the southern plains, the second one being here in parts of the Mid-South, and the third one, honestly, over here approaching the Carolinas. Now, that's what I think could be the three, one of these three being the epicenter of summer drought right now. And yes, that includes AgSouth territory, and I'm concerned about it. I'll show you what the models say. I'll show you what the analogs say, and just so that we can stitch together this idea. But remember, this is only through August. After August, I'm expecting a very active hurricane season, which is what we're going to talk about at the end of this video. So here you go. This was the radar imagery leading up to early this morning here on Thursday morning. And I'm recording a day early because I'm going to take Good Friday off to visit family this weekend. But as you watch, the frontal boundary stalled out on us. And the reason it did was because the upper level flow ran parallel to the front. And that just means the front had no reason to move. So we just got lots and lots and lots of rain off of this particular setup. But after this gets through, things go a bit quieter. And what we're going to be watching is the West Coast, where a deep low is forming here and it's going to slide to the south. In fact, today on Thursday, the upper level trough looks like this in the west. But what's going to happen is by the time we get into Saturday, it becomes highly amplified, more north-south flow than west to east, which is going to leave this low sitting here off of the California coast. Now, why am I showing you this? Well, the idea here is that a week ago, I thought this would already be progressing across the country throughout the Easter weekend and hitting us. But instead now, things are on a bit of a delay. To show you the progress, I would like to look at the artificial intelligence forecasting system, because it was the best at picking up on the big storm system that just rolled through the midsection of the country. So watch this. As I play through the remainder of this weekend, we have a ridge that builds in. Heat comes in with it. It's going to be what I think is going to be a really beautiful Easter weekend, all because the trough lingers back to the west. When does it come out? Maybe Monday night. We're looking at a severe weather threat in the central part of the United States. It moves over towards Tennessee, Kentucky on Tuesday night, and then the front sweeps through us late this week. And I'll show you the timing of that in a few moments. But it's going to have some pretty cold air behind it. And that cold air is going to get locked into a deeper low that goes over New England. See it right here. But that's through the 3rd and 4th that it gets to us. Watch this. By the 5th, 6th, and 7th, that's gone. And a new system starts to emerge here in the west, which means we're on this pace, it seems like about one system a week coming through our area. Now, it seems as though the models want to leave throughout much of April. Pattern that's going to do that at times. And that does mean that April should have probably a grand total of 5 decently sized systems rolling through. We'll look at the new long-range April outlook in a moment. But just given this, let's go ahead and kind of check in on what it could mean overall for our next 10 days. That system that starts in California this weekend and moves across the country Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday It's fast enough that overall, much of the next 10 days is drier for a big section of the southern and southeastern United States. And most of what you've got here is coming from the system rolling through right now. It looks something like this when you flip it over to the artificial intelligence forecast. So again, a lot of this was this morning, and it's out after that. We're going to get over to a little bit of a drier pattern for a while. So our chances of grabbing another inch of precipitation in the next 10 days, well, if you got rid of what's already raining early this morning, these numbers really begin to drop off. All the action's west and it's north of us. So let's go have a look at it because it's going to really have an impact on these maps. You see, the last 30 days, where's it been the driest? It's been the driest in the Central Plains. The big snows and the heavy rains that move through the northern plains, upper Midwest have undone some of the drought issues here. But this is the area that I'm most concerned about as we press forward here in the Mid-South. Because over the last 30 days, the map looks like this. Going back to the beginning of March, a little bit shorter time period, these are our precipitation ranks. And I've got every single spot in AgSouth territory right now on the wetter half of the distribution. It's kind of fun, though, how wet. We can look at the departures since the beginning of March. I've got some spots that are 3 to 4 inches wetter than average on these broader climate reporting districts across AgSouth territory. So the drier weather, I'm good. Okay, we could go with a little bit of drier weather for a short amount of time here. So this morning, though, we do have colder air on the backside, and we've certainly got the flood watches out for this part of North Carolina. And it's just for the tail end of this, which should be out by this evening. See that? So this is through midday today on Thursday, gone. Now watch the rest of this. All the actions west and north. High pressure takes over through Friday into Saturday, all the way to midday Saturday. That's it. I mean, we're done after that. So our next system likely doesn't come through until that thing comes out of, the low comes out of California midweek next week. So here's Friday into Saturday, Sunday. And let's watch. I don't see any precipitation coming through on Easter weekend for us. I mean, it's right now looking that dry. So when is the next system going to get here? Well, this is Monday night. This is Tuesday night. Wednesday. I think that's when it gets to us. Tuesday night, Wednesday, the precipitation comes over. And it's moving. It's fast. It's through. It's gone by, Thursday morning. And that's why in the next 7 days, we've got one system, and there's nothing that seems to be following it. But I will make a point here that in the central U.S., as this next system comes out, there is the risk of severe weather here on Monday and there on Tuesday. But right now, there's not strong indicators that by next Wednesday, we get into the high-risk category. For example, you don't see it out there in the the SPC, that stands for Storm Prediction Center's forecast for next Wednesday night into Thursday morning. So it's a Monday and Tuesday event here, but no strong indications that that survives us. But we know it's spring. We can get stronger storms. Just be watching next Wednesday, all right? So total precip, a lot of this is now. And then next Wednesday, same thing from the GFS. Between now and then, we don't have much coming through AgSouth territory. From there, let's go ahead and have a look at the week 2 pattern because we start to see a bit more activity. That'll be the end of our drier stretch and some wetter conditions start coming into parts of the south, mid-south area, which means it'll eventually get toward us. But as it stands, I think we're in a little bit of a lull right now to finish March and to start April, save the one system next week. And of course, that's after the heavy rain we've got right now. But I don't think that the rest of the month of April stays as infrequent with storm systems as to what I've just mentioned to you over the next 10 days. Because the new forecast from April 10th to May 10th continues to show all of AgSouth territory on the wetter side of average. Now, we're going to put this into a broader narrative in a few moments, but just tuck that away in the back of your mind for a few moments. Temperature-wise, we've already made a break over towards some warmer conditions this morning, but we did get some pretty chilly air here, and a lot of the snow-cooled air to the north still in the single digits as the sun was rising. But our frost threat over the next 7 days looks like this in gray, so notice we do have parts of the Appalachian Mountains getting down to northern Georgia, but also this part of central North Carolina that could still see a frost event going forward. So here was our morning temperatures or daytime temperatures today on Thursday. But watch, by Friday, Saturday, and look at that. Sunday, yes, 70s, approaching 80, maybe getting into the low 80s. Monday, Tuesday, still mild. The front comes through Wednesday and knocks the temperatures back out. Like that's it. That's what we've got going for it. I'm excited about it because it's a good stretch of nice weather, which is something we always kind of like to look forward to. Day 5 through 10 began to moderate in the temperatures. So did day 10 through 15. So this means if we compare the models, because this is the European day 5 through 10. This is the European day 10 through 15. We've got a better signal for more warmer conditions arriving, which may mean that this signal we've been seeing from the European model, hanging on to some cooler air around the Appalachian Mountains, may not really be there. It does appear that the coolest air is going to be in the west. We're going to open this up to a bit more warmer conditions as we press forward. This is all the way out there to April. This is week 4, so April to April 24th. Now, as I mentioned, even though the beginning of the month maybe starts off with just 1 or 2 systems, it does appear that activity is going to start to increase. And you can see out here as we approach middle of the month, we start to show up a little bit for the wetter signal here from the CFSV2 as well. A lot of that's going to be promoted by the fact the MJO is going to leave the Western Pacific and return to the Indian Ocean or the Maritime Continent, which means north of Australia. And if that occurs, that's a pretty good indicator of a lack of really, really cold air coming in. And also it's a better indicator of maybe a little more active spring time frame. Okay, where do we take this? Let's talk about what I think the remainder of the growing season is going to be now that we've got a glimpse into a big chunk of April. First thing I want to do is I want to tell you about what's going on with our ocean temperatures. I'm going to finish this discussion talking about the Atlantic and the risk of the hurricane season, but my focus right now is going to be on the Pacific. Yeah, we see a lot of warm water, which at glance we'd say El Niño, El Niño. But the reality is the trade winds have already increased their momentum, which means they're stronger out of the east. And there's a lot of colder water that's just about to upwell here, right along the ocean surface in the next several days. El Niño is going to become a story. It's going to be in the past very, very quickly. And if I show you how all the models stack up, like the Australians against the Canadians, the Europeans, the Japanese, the French, the US, and the British, watch this. They're all still on the warmer side of average now in April. But by August, some of the models, like the Canadian model, the NOAA's forecasting models in the UK Met Office, are not just La Niña, but moderate to strong La Niña. We have questions as to what that means. So I'm going to do something with you here. I'm going to show you 2 different scenarios in review. We've actually looked at this, but let's just go over it again. The first thing I want to show you is an analog approach. The analog approach right now just uses every year that had an El Niño in the preceding winter, that faded in spring, was gone by summer, even maybe La Niña by summer. That's all of the years listed there. In May to June, tended to be driest in the Mid-South and Delta region, back to Texas. We did not have a strong dry signal in AgSouth territory. What about temperatures? Well, we didn't even have a strong signal on temperatures either. Okay, so May to June. Could we be looking at something close to climatological normal? Yeah, I mean, that's what the analogs would suggest. They kind of wash out the signal, so that could be a solution. But remember, when we think about this, some of these years were quite wild. And they're offsetting others that were wild in the opposite direction. So I want to be very cautious when I tell you that, hey, I don't see a strong dry signal and I don't see a strong cold signal for May to June. But this is just an analog approach where we're blending years. Let's do the same technique and go look at summer. There seems to be better evidence when you look at all of these years that we could possibly be getting ourselves into a warmer than average summer, with most of that additional heat coming in warmer overnight lows. But what about the precipitation side of it? Now, this is another place where that narrative has to come in of going, well, why isn't it showing anything? It's not showing anything because we have competing years. For example, 2016 is in here. I mean, that was epic drought right in this area. But it's being offset by wetter years in this distribution. So the analogs present a very interesting case in that they maybe don't tell the full story on where the risk could be. But I'm going to start to give you a piece to what I think we might be dealing with. Okay, so let's do this. While this may not be showing anything, this is. Using those same years, but instead of looking at precipitation, looking at the pattern. One thing I noticed is this. Of all these years stitched together, June to August, they tended to want to put a ridge somewhere here. And if it sits there, this is a problem for AgSouth, because the flow goes around you. That's a piece of the Bermuda High. Now, I'm going to tell you, I actually think the greatest risk for this is over the southern plains, not here. But it is in the analogs that is a possibility. So we cannot ignore it. What is important about my assessment of maybe the southern plains is that actually aligns with the European model solution, the National Multi-Model Ensemble forecast, and our own government's CPC forecast. In fact, let's go look at that real quick before I come back to the hurricane season. You see, this is their outlook for April, May, June. Where do they have the drought? Here, in region 1 of my 3 regions. As we then go into May, June, July, where do they have it? They've got it here, not over us. As we go from May, June, July to June, July, August, where do they have the drought? Here in the Western Plains. And they finally, by July, August, September, try to bring it into the central part, like over Kansas City. But that was a wet signal that just sticks around for AgSouth territory. I'm going to tell you that in late May, we'll know. In late May, we'll see how the Bermuda High shifts and where it sets up shop. And if it is right here, this is going to be wrong. If it's here, yep, you're right. This is the way it's going to look for us, stormy. But I mentioned a moment ago, I want to talk about the hurricane season. So let's go back and have a look at that. Because what we need to examine in the hurricane season is, during all those years, how did the pressure patterns set up? Well, there's a lot of low pressure coming off of Africa. What does that mean? A lot of African easterly waves. If we have high pressure that sets up here, this is part of the Bermuda High. Higher pressure over the southeast, and a large area of high pressure over Hawaii. Why do we care about all 3 of these? Because they tend to be the position of our subtropical highs, meaning tropical systems tend to go south and south. But this high doesn't just sit here every day. It meanders. Sometimes it meanders to Texas. Sometimes it meanders off the coast. And as it does, that is an indicator that we could easily, just based on the movement of the position of that high, have a tropical system that gets in and hits us. So I believe that this year your tropical hurricane or tropical cyclone risk is elevated above average. I'm not going to add any other adjectives to it than that. But I think right now it's above average based on history. Because when you look at the surface composite precipitation rate, we get a lot of activity coming off of the Sahel, higher than normal pressure and drier conditions here, but an active go of it in this area. So we need to be thinking hard about this upcoming hurricane season. What I want to finish with here is I want to talk about South America very quickly, because it's raining pretty heavily on safrinha cotton and safrinha corn right now. But there is risk as we go forward that this whole pattern begins to flip and wetter conditions move back into Argentina and southern Brazil, and drier conditions could come into this region where we're growing a lot of that safrinha crop. It's not a guarantee. It makes sense based on the positional movement of the MJO, but it's going to remain something we have to watch carefully as we go forward. So for the long weekend ahead of you, I just wanted to present some of my longer range ideas. We'll keep working on these and building them up, and we'll talk again next week. Have a great Easter weekend, and we'll talk soon. Thanks.